Hello again. You know the format by now. A dozen film recommendations with a musical theme. This time, documentaries concerning post-punk, indie, alternative music. As ever, unranked and personal choices always win out over the canonical texts. I'll be ordering these in approximately chronological order, but sometimes a thematic link will just be too good to pass up. No messing around today. Straight into it with at number 1, and ironically, the most recent production on this list from 2023, Mutiny in Heaven by Ian White, the story of the birthday party. The long overdue final word on the band, which effectively introduced Nick Cave, amongst others, to a wider audience than they'd ever reached as Boys Next Door, an early incarnation of the band which never performed outside of their native Australia. Those origins are explored. They met as school friends in mid-70s Melbourne and cut their teeth playing assorted covers. They quickly evolved. New members were welcomed: Tracy Pugh on bass, Roland S. Howard on guitar, and all original material soon pushed out the covers. Their reinvention was completed on arrival in London 1980, sporting that new name and a cathartic, assaultive live show that lit a fire under the capital's increasingly stale scene, still labouring in a post-punk lull. Visually, the movie hits the perfect tone, mixing up chaotic live footage, print media, and press shots with stylised animated interludes, filling in some of the more lurid, undocumented incidents that dogged them. Pugh's ill-judged car theft whilst under the influence being a perfect example. Naturally, the casualties following the band's dissolution mean that Howard and Pugh are present only in archival form. But there are all new contributions, remarkably candid ones too, from Cave, Mick Harvey, Phil Calvert, and assorted peers and associates. A short-lived but very productive band, hugely important in the post-punk firmament and totally worthy of this full documentary treatment. The drugs, the craziness, the instinctive creativity, and yes, those transcendent live performances are laid out here in all their glory and squalor. More 80s post-punk at 2 with another band with a metaphysical axe to grind from 2013, The Death and Resurrection Show by Sean Pettigrew, aka everything you always wanted to know about Killing Joke but were afraid to ask. And I do mean everything. This is a monster piece of work, clocking in at 2.5 hours, which may make it a little more Killing Joke than you actually need. Such is influence. You can't really blame them for the enduring popularity of certain strands of industrial rock or techno metal. But as the innovators of that sound, it's very easy to unfairly tar them with the same brush, given their stylistic drift into those same waters during their albums this side of the millennium. Nonetheless, fan of their music or not, the Killing Joke story is supremely entertaining. The occultism, the time jazz fled to Iceland and unlocked a new dimension, recording vocals in the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid. Intercut as the film is with Jazz reading excerpts from his memoir, Letters from Cythera, it often comes across like one of those ancient aliens TV shows you find in the higher numbers in the channel guide. Part mysticism, part parascience, part conspiracy theory. There are WTF moments aplenty. And crucially, as well as being good looking at and well researched, and with contributions from, at that time, all the surviving Joke members, it's just quite fun. Jazz's mum almost steals the show, which, given she's up against everyone from Aleister Crowley to Jimmy Page, speaks volumes about the Coleman family upbringing that laid the groundwork for Killing Joke. If you like any period of the band's music, there's a story here that will scratch an itch, and whether you have time for the mumbo-jumbo or not, the music's power may have you thinking, maybe there's something in this after all. Third up, the first of a pair of scene-focused movies, which, whilst to a penny in the punk rock doc genre, are much thinner on the ground when it comes to post-punk. So, from 1989, this is Put Blood in the Music by George Atlas. No ritual, sacrifice, or ceremonies here. This is a 50-ish minute documentary exploring the late 80s downtown New York City music scene, originally broadcast as an episode of ITV's long-running arts and culture program, The South Bank Show. And yes, you can watch it here on YouTube, but bonus points to anyone out there who can find Put More Blood Into the Music, which IMDb reliably informs me is a 2-hour cut of presumably the same source material. Colour me intrigued. Catching the tail end of the bad old days of New York City, Times Square hadn't been fully cleaned up yet. Blood focuses on 2 artists of the period, John Zorn and Sonic Youth, to explore the influence and direction of the city's wildly diverse downtown art scene. I caught this on original broadcast, and being a fresh and enthusiastic convert to Sonic Youth at the time, circa Daydream Nation, it had a big impact on me. Rewatching nostalgia, a period piece of a scene in flux. It still works either way, in my opinion. The fidgety, kinetic, green-screened interviews over city scenes are extremely late 80s arts roundup, but the choice of interview subjects is impeccable. Lydia Lunch, Lenny Kaye, John Cale, Vernon Reid, Karen Findlay, Glenn Branca, and the live cuts of Zorn and Sonic Youth catch both at their peak. Short but sweet and supremely evocative of the city and that specific point in time. For a more laid-back affair, befitting of the southern college town it depicts, from 1986, Athens, GA, Inside Out, by Tony Gayton. If you were discovering REM for the first time at this point in the 80s, then Inside Out was pretty much essential viewing. They were the big draw of this documentary, which shone a light on the Athens music scene they'd almost single-handedly turned into a media buzz. It's a pretty homely affair, catching a lot of bands, big and small, in and around the city, both playing and offering up their thoughts about Athens. Pylon and the B-52s would be the other marquee names, but Love Tractor, Dream So Real, Flat Duo Jets, Kilkenny Cats, others are all given plenty of airtime here. Mike Mills and Peter Buck are the main interview subjects for the REM fans out there, with Michael Stipe at the height of his mysterious or inscrutable phase, only really present for the band performances and the odd moody shot. The Pylon live footage is great, and the interviews with Michael and Vanessa are thrillingly odd, low-energy encounters, as befitting a band of visual artists who stumbled into music almost by accident. Of the second-tier acts here, I was always quite taken by Love Tractor, an unusual, for the time, instrumental 4-piece that once featured Bill Berry on drums. Due for rediscovery, maybe? Well, they're certainly worthy of a little of your time, either way. And like Put Blood, Inside Out does a great job of translating something of the surroundings into the look and feel. And New York is all street performers and city hustle. Athens, all chilled boho students and barbecue joints. Both offer up facets of 80s alternative music culture in America before it went overground at the decade's end. And to catch 2 of the biggest acts of that period, right on the cusp of them both going over the top. The thing, however, about being under the radar, grassroots, DIY, off to one side, was that it gave opportunities for artists, outsiders maybe, to find an audience that would otherwise not have existed. 2 guys up next, both of who could be considered outsider artists, although the connotations of that particular term do us all a disservice, I think. Anyway, at 5, and for my money, probably the most satisfying watch on this list, cinematically, thematically, from a storytelling point of view. Yeah, from 2005, it's The Devil and Daniel Johnston by Jeff Feuerzeig. A story with a bit of everything: a prodigious talent, unrequited love, overnight fame, and a chaotic descent into mental illness and psychosis. By turns a showcase for Daniel's musical and artistic talents, his art forms a huge part of the movie's visual presentation, and a piecing together of his mounting obsessive behaviour, his increasingly fevered religious proclamations, and the efforts of those around him to nurture his art whilst protecting him during his dangerously impulsive episodes. It's a beautiful film. His music, front and centre, all lo-fi, pining and ramshackle, Beatlesque intent. The stories, from friends, from family, from fellow musicians, Gibby Haynes, Sonic Youth Jad Fair, they're heartbreaking. Films documented lives like Daniel's walk a very narrow path. They can gloss over the ugliness, the hurt, and concentrate solely on the music. Or they can revel in the spectacle, the peaks, the troughs, heights, depths, the physical and emotional toll. The Devil and Daniel Johnston navigates these difficulties with ease, by turns feel good, then nightmarish, heartwarming, then devastating. It's an outstanding piece of work which embraces its subject matter, never forgetting that this man, his family, are living this. And Daniel's creativity and destructiveness come from the same place, from the same person. And he himself has very little to say in how that manifests. Please watch this if you haven't done so. You will love it. Next, a film with similar themes. The obsessive eccentric, the need to create outweighing the emotional damage that follows in its wake. The fine line between genius and insanity. But this one features a giant papier-mâché head. As 6, from 2018, Being Frank, the Chris Seavey story by Steve Sullivan. I almost included 2014's Frank in my post-punk movie list, but this telling the true story of Frank Sidebottom, and his alter ego Chris Seavey packs in even more emotional heft, in my opinion. It's less mannered, more grounded. The hilarity and the pathos are in perfect balance. That 2014 movie was based on John Rodson's book, John being a member of Frank's backing band for a while in the 80s. And he is one of the many on-screen contributors, alongside family members, musician friends, bandmates, fellow comics. It covers Chris's childhood, his obsession with the Beatles, Subbuteo, Thunderbirds, Doctor Who, his first musical project, The Freshies, best known for their 1981 indie novelty hit, I'm in Love with the Girl on the Manchester Virgin Megastore checkout desk, and his long-time comic persona, Frank Sidebottom, an insanely chipper northerner with a giant head and a sidekick, a hand puppet, Little Frank, that accompanied him everywhere. A lovely tribute, Chris died in 2010, which tries to get to the heart of Chris's manic creativity without ever glossing over quite how impossibly difficult he made life for those around him. Wild creative swings, impetuous business decisions, always skint. His family and friends having to roll with the punches through the good times and the bad. It was often difficult even for his friends to identify where Chris ended and Frank began. But by taking in his life's work, everything from cheese on toast to handmade costumes to stop motion epics, it builds slowly a picture of the man behind the mask and quite how unique that man was. Most definitely not Bobbins, but an appreciation for northern vernacular and parochial humour will probably help get the most out of this one. I'll be hitting a closing stretch of dedicated band stroke artist features soon, but before that, one of those music docs that has an appeal beyond the genre. Yeah, this is all about personalities, egos, and how the whole rock and roll sideshow is very often nothing to do with music at all. Yeah, at 7 from 2004, Dig by Ondi Timina. 7 years around the turn of the millennium following the contrasting fortunes of, initially, Friends, the Dandy Warhols, and the Brian Jonestown Massacre. Their interactions with each other and the music biz, and how drugs, fame, money, and creativity don't necessarily mix. Consider Dig a kind of indie cousin to another music documentary from this year, that being Metallica, Some Kind of Monster, both focusing on quite how much bullshit grown-ass people seem capable of generating when they become convinced of their own importance. Abandoned tours, sabotaged industry showcase gigs, sacking band members on stage punch-ups. There's undoubtedly some great music hiding in this movie, but that's not really what it's about. Take it as a serio-comic treatise on what it actually means to sell out in the modern-day music industry, and how genuinely creative people struggle with that, often to their own detriment. Moving a little faster through these last 5, being as they're all about one act or another. Less background, more on the movie. What makes it effective? So, 8. Breadcrumb Trail, a 2014 documentary about Slint by Lance Bangs. One word should do this. Spiderland. The whole middle third is devoted to the writing, rehearsing and recording of this astonishing record, and it's handled perfectly. There's detail. Brian McMahon writing the lyrics inside a locked car in a garage to give him a quiet space to work in. Britt making an unscheduled stop to buy new cymbals on the drive to the recording studio. And there's also mystery. The recording was near live, minimal treatments, over a single 2-day session that is communicated by everyone as a near dreamlike experience. An odd band, crazily young when they formed, but with a singular focus on the music, utterly at odds with their goofier schoolyard fooling around. I mean, there's footage of them playing Tweez-era material at a high school Battle of the Bands contest, for Christ's sake. Yeah, they were not regular kids, and Breadcrumb Trail gets that early, and that realization sets the tone for the whole enterprise. They meant something when no one knew who they were, and that something persisted, amplified when their music finally broke, long after its initial release. 9, from 2005, The Fearless Freaks by Bradley Beasley, the story of the Flaming Lips. A couple of things make this one work. First is the long relationship between Beasley and Wayne Coyne. A native of the Lips, Oklahoma, he's been directing videos with them since the early 90s, often co-credits alongside Coyne. So the visual presentation is seamlessly integrated with pretty much every image of the band on film thus far. Degraded tape, cut-up footage, wild collage-style graphics, eye-popping colour bursts. You're in no doubt that this is a Flaming Lips feature. And secondly, it's a pretty intimate affair. There's a wealth of home movie footage of young Coynes, and their presence in Oklahoma City is a constant. Wayne still lives, at the time of filming at least, in his old neighbourhood, meaning visits to old fast food jobs and the like never feel forced or staged. Also, for intimate, read candid. Stephen Drozd's heroin addiction is right there on film, utterly unsanitised, and the band's on-off drug issues are dealt with as you would any other element of a band's makeup. If those things add up to make it primarily one for the fans, then yeah, you might be right, but it does what it does right, and you can ask no more of it. A 10, one for the 90s indie rock aficionados out there. From 2019, Brainiac, Transmissions After Zero by Eric Mahoney. There's a very simple reason this one makes the list. It exists. But seriously, whether it's the plethora of streaming platforms for this sort of content or Gen Z rediscovering stuff that Gen X might have got a bit careless with, idea. But I'm constantly amazed that documentaries like this Brainiac one, about a band with just a 5-year run in the 90s who never got to sign a deal with a major label, that this can get made here and now is, yeah, it's kind of amazing. And Brainiac are worth it. They're the other Dayton band, sonically fearless weirdo pop with scant regard for the tastes of the day, and in the late Tim Taylor, a frontman and songwriter with talent and chops to burn. Lots of footage, lots of interviews, and a lot of love. They really did have a ways to go, and it's great to see the remaining Brainiacs giving it another try. They've been touring as a trio since 2022. Like the band, watch it. Never heard of them, watch it. Yeah, just do it. 11th up, one for those who are in it for the long haul. The guys and girls toiling away in bands, perennially out on the fringes, there for the music and the camaraderie from 2013. Couldn't You Wait? The Story of Silkworm by Seth Pomeroy. Indie rock stalwarts forging a 17-year career from the late 80s to the mid-noughties. Those who discovered them loved them. The tragic death of Michael Dahlquist in a car crash in 2005, seemingly the only thing that could stop them. Like the Brainiac doc, I'm just overjoyed a thing like this is out there. I started this channel by looking at some 90s bands who were slowly receding in the critical rearview mirror as new musical narratives of the period became normalised. Such views would have you overlook Silkworm, and homespun productions like this refocus our attention. Silkworm never set the world on fire, but left a body of work that this movie foregrounds beautifully. There were musicians, as the interview subjects clearly reveal. Matt Cadane, Stephen Malkmus, Clint Conley, Jeff Tweedy, and most tenderly of all, Steve Albini, struggling to hold back the tears when remembering Mike Dahlquist. And to finish, one for taking stock, a back from the brink story, managing to document its subject at a difficult time, foreshadowing his brush with mortality only a few years before his passing in 2024. At 12 from 2019, The Chills, The Triumph and Tragedy of Martin Phillips by Julia Parnell and Rob Carey. I would suggest this isn't the film for you if you're looking for a career-spanning retrospective or a run through the hits. The focus is squarely on Chills mainstay Martin Phillips and his, I hate this word, journey from dreamy child to broken adult. It steers clear of the pity poor me, drugs ruined my life shtick through sheer rigour. His songwriting genius is a given, but the man's failings, crippling perfectionism, blinkered single-mindedness, bordering on callousness, unchecked self-absorption, they're all laid out with very little set dressing or prettying up. Never exactly a Kiwi Marquis Smith, but getting there. Member after member of the Chills is on hand to recount their sidelining or dumping whilst being simultaneously happy to bat for Martin's amazing craftsmanship. The movie follows the treatment of Martin's increasingly worrying liver disease, the product of years of drinking and a Hep C infection picked up in his heroin days, with a dispassionate eye, allowing Martin to ruminate on his life, his condition, to prepare for the inevitable whilst still working on new music. Given the warmth, the sweetness of so much of the Chills music, you may leave this film feeling a little conflicted, but ultimately in a better place to appreciate those late period Chills records, knowing the shadow that Phillips was working under. It's a fine documentary with a balance to its storytelling that informs rather than confirms. Okay, there you are, and here they are listed for your viewing comfort. As ever, I've tried to source locations for you to watch as many of these as possible. Links are in the description below. Sorry if they're not accessible where you are. Blame the Bezoses of this world, not me. Here are quick mentions for a few extras that I considered, but I've decided to leave here in the footnotes. Not a Photograph, the Mission of Burma story from 2006. A 70-minute run through Burma's history and reformation at the turn of the millennium. It's not the final word on the band by any means, but a solid watch for fans and an introduction maybe for the uninitiated. I almost went for this one because I love them, but ultimately there were better pure documentaries that deserved inclusion over this, I think. King Rocker from 2020, comedian Stuart Lee's sideways look at the career of Robert Lloyd and his bands, The Prefects and The Nightingales. Quirky, funny, it's a labour of love for Stuart where the guerrilla framing device is almost as important as the subject at hand. Wesley Willis's Joyrides from 2008, another outsider artist documentary. This one about the late and extremely prolific Wesley Willis. There's a joyful hilarity to Wesley's music, which even I'll admit can outstay its welcome. on prolonged exposure. But this film is lovingly made, and its focus on his visual art, if anything, eclipses the musical stuff. And lastly, Mistaken for Strangers from 2013, a film that's kind of about the National, but actually speaks more to the relationship between the Berninger brothers, director Tom and singer Matt. You can watch it as a pure tour documentary show, but it succeeds best as a weird kind of family therapy acted out in real time. Again, quirky, a little self-indulgent maybe, but ultimately worthy of your time. And that's it for this video, and I think for movies and documentaries, at least for a while. Let me know about your post-punk indie documentary favourites in the comments below. There are plenty out there, and as much as I've tried to dig out some interesting examples, I'm sure there are ones I've missed. Do set me straight. As ever, your support is both welcome and essential. Uploading less frequently puts me at the mercy of the algorithm, so likes help keep the channel afloat, and subscriptions even more so. Thank you, one and all. And with that, I'll bid you goodbye. Please do take care, and I hope to see you again quite soon. Bye for now.